All right, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the short delay due to technical difficulties. I would like to call the meeting to order at 1:06 p.m. If we look to the agenda, is there any added items that anybody would like to add to the agenda? Seeing none. Could I see a consensus for the adoption of the agenda? Yep. Okay. So the agenda is adopted as presented. Thank you very much. Adoption of the previous minutes, regular council meeting minutes of December 8th, 2025. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections to be made in those minutes? I'll have a chance to read them over. Okay, through consensus then, is everybody in acceptance of the minutes as presented? Thank you very much. Consensus is reached. Moving on to item number 3, bylaws. And I'll turn it over to CAO Williams for introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. For the first of our 2 land use bylaw amendments, Municipal Planner Sloan's going to lead us through this first one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This first bylaw amendment is for a rezoning of 4318 50th Avenue. There's a few different things on this property, but you might know it as the Olds Bottle Depot or accredited supports for the community. Currently, it is zoned for industrial, light industrial, and this application proposes to amend the bylaw to rezone it to 2 different things. So the front portion would be general commercial, and the rear portion would be a mixed-use center. They've made this application because they need temporary use of one of the existing buildings, or they would like to use it for residential use for some of their tenants who temporarily have to move out of one of their other facilities while they renovate for a period of 4 to 6 months, and then it would go back to its current use. The proposed zoning would allow for that temporary use and would actually be better suited for the current use than industrial zoning is, because there's an office building there and there's some programming space for their other work that makes more sense in the mixed-use center district than it does in light industrial. This amendment also proposes to add recycling facility as a use for this site only in the general commercial district. That use is currently allowed in light industrial, so it aligns with the current zoning. But the Uptown Area Redevelopment Plan calls for the industrial zoning to be phased out for a mix of residential and commercial use. So this brings it more into alignment with the ARP, allowing the recycling center to continue operating and on site. No changes are foreseen for that use, though. I'll leave it at that for now. This is just for first reading. At the public hearing, I do believe the applicants would like to come and speak and explain in greater detail than I have their situation and their request for this change. But it is also there in attachment 1 of the council of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. I believe comments are allowed at this time. If not, I think we go right to motion, do we not? Clarity questions? Yeah. Is there any clarity questions from anybody? Councillor Taylor?
Thanks, Mayor Daly, and through you to Dr. Castellon. Yeah, I think you just covered my biggest concern was after the 4 to 6 months is over, if that land use is appropriate, but you did mention that the mixed is still going to be relevant, still going to be useful for their intended purpose. So that was my one concern. So thanks.
That was my concern as well, just that use of the word temporary in there for residential. And so we've had that discussion before at council. What is the definition of temporary and where does the end of that happen? So I think we'll get probably more insight into that at the public hearing when they talk. Thank you. Any other comments? None? Okay, then I will call for a motion. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I make the motion that bylaw number 2026-01, amendment to land use bylaw 2025-14 be given first reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any comments? None? All right. I call for the vote then. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And now for the motion for public hearing, Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I move that Monday, January 26, 2026 at 1 p.m. in council chambers be set as the date, time, and place for a public hearing on bylaw number 2026-01.
Thank you, Councillor Overwater. Any further questions, comments? Okay. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we move down to bylaws, section 3 now. 3.1, bylaw 2026-01, land use bylaw 2025-14 amendment. Over to CAO Williams.
Thank you again, Mayor Daley. For this one, I will start us off and Kyle can provide any additional details. This one is administration-led through council. Involves what we call the northeast area, which, as the map shows on the screen, the area immediately north and east of the old town office. It covers approximately 4 quarter sections of land. This area was largely annexed in 2020 from Mountain View County, save for the southwest parcel of land. In 2023-24, we completed the area structure plan, the ASP acronym, plus the servicing study, which tells us essentially how the water, sanitary, storm, transportation will be built out in this area. As the map shows, there's 2 different shades. One is beige and one is pink. This amendment's proposing to remove the commercial area from this area structure plan, which is the shaded pink area. So the reason there, my PowerPoint got a little messed up, but we're looking at our larger economic development strategy, which I'll speak to later in my CAO report. But this area is very large. It is the next place we will go for industrial development after our Southeast Industrial Park is full. But we have significant issues now when we look at the correlation between the servicing costs, the market demand, and the town's ability to fund and plan for that. I'll just make this a little less now. So this is called greenfield land. Servicing costs to service the entire 4 quarter sections, about $8 to $10 million is our best estimate. It does depend on a few things like roadways. And this doesn't have to all be done at once, but at the very least, we're expecting 50% of this cost would be borne by the initial developer or development that goes into this northeast area. The town obviously does not have the financial capacity to what's called front this money. How it works in a lot of larger municipalities, certainly in heavy industrial development areas, whether it be Strathcona County or adjacent park east of Edmonton, Rocky View County, etc., that the municipality acquires the land and pays do the initial servicing, creating essentially development-ready lots, and then they recoup their investment into the land through the off-site levy regime. What we're missing, of course, is that we don't own any of the land, and we don't have the initial multi-million-dollar cost to start installing a lift station or a water system or roadways. So when it comes to the mix between commercial and industrial, the original intention of having the commercial strip on Highway 27 and 2A was more of a transition into town from a highway commercial into more commercial, essentially. That is still the ideal aesthetic, I would propose, if you're thinking 10, 20 years in the future, driving westward into Olds from Highway 2, the transition area looks better than an industrial area. However, the likelihood of that happening is very low as far as we can see. So as we approach our economic development strategy, which again I'll speak to a bit later, we see this as a issue for growth to happen. The most likely thing for this to be developed would be a large-scale industrial developer to take on the project, where their business is of such a scale, the initial $4 to $5 million servicing costs is not a significant bone of contention. It's not a barrier. Commercial demand is low, and plus it's very risk adverse at these dollar levels. Commercial doesn't carry the same amount of capital investment, generally speaking. So further with commercial, even though we're reducing commercial land, this is just a snapshot of the west end of Olds. Starting from the southeast, we have the credit union at the far southeast bottom right of this picture. There's a couple of lots there. Moving past No Frills, land recently acquired by the town. Not all of it, but most of it to the west of the No Frills grocery store. That's future commercial land as well. There's still some land left that Loblaws has retained. Moving north, we have at the far top left, in the northwest quarter, have the Mr. Orum's land, and again with the some vacant area in the what's now the All Choice Rentals building. That entire area is slated for future either commercial development or commercial redevelopment as well. This is without considering that we have other commercial pockets in existing ASPs, like the Highlands ASP, without considering the redevelopment potential along Highway 27 and 2A, or what we hope to achieve with our brownfield redevelopment strategy in the coming years. You may see some vacant lots along the highway also. So long story short, that we think there's at least a 20-plus year supply of vacant or ready to be redeveloped commercial land, making the reduction through this ASP amendment non-impactful. Little small, but this is just two snips from our land use bylaw. So even though the rest of 80% of the 4 quarter sections are zoned industrial, those are the uses in our light industrial area, of which this this northeast area will largely be focused. Heavy industrial is what we see more in the southeast industrial park. But for now, the ASP amendment is largely focused on future use, just capturing industrial and not specifying too heavily one way or the other of what it will be. Yeah, I believe that's all I had. Mr. Sloan, anything you want to add to that at all? Okay. Well, today, questions for clarity welcomed. I just want to give council that brief overview, even though you have an understanding of the issue at hand. But we'll hold public hearings on the 26th and move to second and third reading if council deems it fit. Happy to take any questions on clarity, though, right now.
Thank you, CEO Williams. And sorry for, I misquoted there. It's 3.2 on the agenda. I think I said 3.1. So, yes, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to CAO Williams. Is the change to the industrial zoning from commercial going to still allow for it to be developed commercially if that does come to pass, since that we're stating that that's still possibly the best use scenario? Is if somebody wanted to develop that commercially, would that still be allowed under this industrial zoning?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I'll let Kyle jump in, but he's more apt to answer this. I would say, unless Kyle contradicts me, there's more opportunity in the industrial zoning to have commercial uses than there is vice versa. If it's zoned commercial to have industrial zoning, but certainly for other commercial uses, I'm assuming a rezoning would be required. But Kyle, care to add to that?
Sure, thank you. I will add a bit to that. Just going back to when we were developing these districts and the uses in them in the new land use bylaw through the past year, we did see the light industrial district as a bit of a hybrid because you do see that in many places where you have business parks that are more offices and they still have restaurants and stuff for the workers in the area. So our light industrial zoning that's proposed does have things like offices, restaurants and bars are still allowed. What you're really removing is our commercial zoning does allow for mixed use development with residential uses, but the industrial zoning does not. So that's the biggest thing that you'd be losing here, but there are still a lot of commercial opportunities under this zoning.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and through you to either the CAO or the municipal planning officer. I don't want to get too far ahead of the process, given we will have the public hearing and everything, but just trying to get a sense. It was mentioned $8 to $10 million for a greenfield development. Just looking for a little bit of a comment around, we're basically looking at a fairly large, significant player or players that would take this type of a project on, assuming everything goes forward? Or is it common that you would salami slice or piecemeal this out and have multiple developer players looking to get this thing going? Or are we really, would we really be looking for a single source, if that makes sense? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Through the chair to Councillor Wilson. Speaking in general terms, there's no single developer that I can see would take on all 4 quarter sections of land. That's a fairly substantial development. What we're thinking here ideally is that whether it be a quarter section or 2 quarter sections, that a developer would be able to front that initial $3 to $5 million to build out the water and sanitary initial road network, and that would then unlock the development of the remainder of that area, whether it be 2 or 3 quarter sections. So that initial upfront cost, the biggest piece is the sanitary lift. The water is relatively straightforward, as water is pressurized in our system, and the topography here, the drainage runs from west to east, elevation high on the west, lower on the east. But that means the sanitary, we have to pump the sanitary back uphill, and that's a multi-million-dollar process with lift stations and pipes. So if we're able to complete the first phase of development, whatever value that looks like, that would complete essentially the sanitary lift for the rest of the parcel. So the problem is we really can't build anything until that sanitary lift is done. So just as an analogy, if a commercial business, restaurant, clothing store, whatever it might be, even the larger scale ones, Winners, HomeSense, Sports Check, etc., the initial investment is going to be $3 to $5 million. The return on investment for that is, in our eyes, not feasible for any commercial development to take that on. And when you look at the geography of the current zoning, the building has to start, the development has to start on the west end of the northeast area, along Highway 2A and 27. So the fact that it's zoned commercial, where the development has to start, means the commercial developer has to essentially take that on. So if there's going to be commercial in the future, it probably has to come in later phases where there's already that investment taken place. This was built, this is common elsewhere, again, probably where the municipalities, generally counties, can front this money. Or you're in a place like Calgary, where the development is more secure, that there's a lot more people, a lot more economic activity. So there's other commercial developers probably who can take this on. Hopefully that's not clear enough.
Thank you. Counselor Kush?
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to either CAO or Development Officer. I'm assuming that when this was originally planned as commercial, part of that decision-making was for aesthetic purposes. When you're driving into town, you have something nice to look at, and it's not just a warehouse. Hypothetically, this moves forward and a developer comes in. Can you remind me, are there provisions within the land use bylaw to make sure that things look nice? Is that landscaping, you drive into, I think it's Sherwood Park from Edmonton, and it looks kind of like a war zone. And we don't want that coming in from the QE2. Are there provisions in the land use bylaw to address that? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Thank you. Through the chair, yes, the land use bylaw does have landscaping requirements. Landscaping requirements in industrial zoning is generally a bit less than in other districts, but it's still a significant portion of the property, whether it's 15% of the parcel cover, of the parcel area. For a quarter section, we would probably want that full 15% to be on the south side to create that visual buffer. So part of our discussions when we've been looking at introducing this has revolved around that, where we feel like we have other tools to help make sure that the gateway into town along the highway is still aesthetically appealing.
Thank you for that. Counselor Overwater?
Thank you, Mayor Daly. I'm sure there'll be many more questions when we go to the public hearing, but I just noticed on the Northeast Area Structure Plan that it still states that our town administration office is there. So possibly when you do the amendments, we could take that out and change the address as to where we're at now.
Yes, that can be updated when we, should the map change, yeah.
Good, thank you. Counselor Taylor?
Thanks, Mayor Daly, and through you to CEO Williams. I think you already touched on this, but just, again, we're doing some clarity here. What kind of or how much development could be done there without the lift station? I think you said none. Is that correct?
Thank you through the chair. So along Highway 2A, there could be some slight room for additional water servicing, but mainly sanitary capacity. But we wouldn't be comfortable recommending tying in at this point until we do larger studies. But it's safe to say we couldn't take on larger sanitary capacity based on the gravity situation. It's not so much that our system can't handle it. We just can't guarantee it's actually going to drain into our system. So, but further exploration would be required, and it never proceeded to the development stage to get that far. Because, again, larger scale developers look at the bigger picture of it. So,
All right, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Any further clarifying questions? All right, Counselor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. I move that bylaw number 2026-02, amendment to Northeast Area Structure Plan bylaw 2024-38, be given first reading as presented.
Thank you for that. Any last comments? None? Okay, then I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Now for the second motion, Counselor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. I make the motion that bylaw number 2026-03, amendment to land use bylaw 2025-14 be given first reading as presented.
Thank you, Counselor Wilson. Any further comments? Seeing none, I ask the question. All those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And now for the call for the public hearing. Counselor Cook.
I move that Monday, January 26, 2026, at 1 p.m. in council chambers be set as the date, time, and place for a joint public hearing on bylaws number 2026-02 and 2026-03.
Thank you very much for that, Counselor Cook. Any last comments? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so that brings us down to, that should be item number 4, business. Business development permit DP 25-209. Turn it over to CO Williams for introduction.
Thank you once again, and we have Development Officer Nathan with us today to lead us through this topic.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. Development permit application 25-209 is located at 5206 57th Avenue, and it's designated low density residential legacy district. This application is for an existing deck and an existing garage. The garage requiring a variance to a side yard setback and to a maximum height. The deck is compliant with all provisions of the land use bylaw. This was brought to our attention because of November 3rd compliance certificate request, where we noted the deficiencies outlined. And after that was outlined, the applicant applied. Our side yard setback is 1.25 meters, and the garage is located 88 centimeters off the property line. Our maximum height is 14.5 feet, and the building is on 24 feet, which is a 63% variance, and that's why it's a council. It appears that the garage was constructed along with the home in 1972. However, we don't have any record of approval of the garage. Given its age and the fact that we haven't received any concerns about the variance, administration is recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. Are we finally clearing up a lot of these non-compliance properties? And with the inspections that we do now, going forward, should somebody have just go ahead and build a garage, or, encroach on, closer to other properties, I'm in the firm belief, I don't have a problem saying, you know what, you didn't get a permit, so you know what, you need to change it. Take it down, move the driveway or whatever. So are we finally getting some clearance on a lot of these non-compliance properties, and going forward, we should not be experiencing that?
Thank you, and through the chair, our current practice, as long as I've been here, after every development permit, we take security from the applicant. Part of him getting money back, they have to give us an RPR outlining where the building actually is after construction, and so at least as long as I've been here, and Kyle can confirm longer, anything new we're catching at that time. That being said, there's a lot of old development in in town, and we catch that when the properties change hands and the buyer hits a compliance certificate, and there's a lot where the current owners haven't as well, and so we're making progress on that front, and I'm confident we're not adding to the backlog, but I wouldn't be overly confident that historical ones we're making a lot of headway yet, but that's going to be a process.
Go ahead, supplemental.
Supplemental, thank you, Mayor Daley. So going forward, should some of these owners that are building without getting a permit to begin with, and you go in, eventually, you go in, you're going to see it's being built, are you going in and are we adamant that we're going to make them change it? Like, we're just not going to give them, oh, you're non-compliant, so now we're going to make you compliant by just writing something up?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Through you, Mayor Daley, to Councillor Overwater. It's, I guess, back to your previous question, this is something I think we'll deal with forever and ever. But when it comes to having larger consequences for unpermitted development, it's a bit of a broader conversation. I would say most of the instances we see is when there's new property owners who want to make sure their property is compliant and they have to live with the sins of the past. So is it reasonable to penalize them versus someone who, built a garage without a permit or didn't consider it? So I think it's a conversation we want to have with council at a higher level. But I think the regime we have in place now, as Nathan mentioned, with the RPR and the security we take, it's trying to balance that thing between ensuring we're being a robust and secure development department versus being flexible to the people who build here and live here. So there's no, I think, perfect recipe for that. But in terms of trying to encourage or entice better behavior, compliance up front, I think there's more options we can consider at a larger scale.
That's what I'm going for, is for going forward. I know we can't change something that happened in 1972, but going forward is what I'm looking at. Thanks.
No, thank you for that. My only question to Mr. Hill is, and I should know the answer to this, so the neighbors that are adjacent to this property, have we canvassed them? Have we talked to them? And what have we heard from them?
Yeah, absolutely. All applications that end up before council, we do a circulation of a minimum of 20 meters off of a subject property, and then if there's any adjacent properties that aren't captured in that 20 meters, in this case across the street, we also add them into a circulation. By and large, and in this case, we don't hear it. We don't hear anything. In any instances where we do, I'll note it in my report.
Good, thank you, because just looking at these numbers, like 0.88 of a meter off of the property line, and I think the deck was less than about a meter as well, somewhere in that range. I just feel that if the neighbors, say anything, it's probably worth quite a bit of value to us here on council if we hear something like that. So thanks for that. Any further questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. Through you to the CEO. I just want to, I thought when the CEO was speaking, he referenced an acronym, RPR, if I heard that right. Can you remind me if that is the acronym? Is it RPR and what it means?
Sorry, a real property report
Yeah.
through the chair.
Yes, thank you. Okay, any further questions? None? And then I'll ask for somebody to make the motion. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor Daley. I move that council approves development permit 25-209, subject to the conditions outlined in the draft.
Thank you for that, Councillor Overwater. Any last comments? Okay, I'll ask for the question. Those involved, those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. So move down to item number 5, correspondence and information. Is there any comments or questions on the correspondence that has been shared with you in the agenda package? Councillor Wilson.
Mayor Daley, and through you to the CEO, if I remember from my last read of the agenda, so the Mountain View County is setting out their priorities and they've asked for our feedback. Just looking for a confirmation how that process will work as far as us feeding into that. Thank you.
Indeed, and through the chair to Councillor Wilson, I believe upcoming service level conversation counts, that will be one of the topics on the agenda on the 20th, I believe. So we will respond to the county accordingly.
Any other questions? Okay, then may I get a motion to approve the correspondence? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daley. I move that the correspondence and information report ending January 12th, 2026 be received for information.
Thank you for that. Any final comments? Nope. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 6, Chief Administrative Officer Report and Action List. I turn it over to CEO Williams.
Thank you once again, Mayor Daley. Just give me a moment to... Here we are. So for my CEO report, just a brief attachment here with our reporter problem data for end of December into and year-end 2025. Still seeing strong results from people utilizing the reporter problem system. We're up quite significantly from 2024 year over year and in December as well. Leading the charge again, given the weather, has been snow and ice complaints mixed in with ongoing questions about water. I'm assuming that's from our meter replacement program. We're having some overlap between what Meter Corps is doing for us and scheduling on our end. Those get captured in here. And then a breakdown of miscellaneous things. Oh, pathways and trails as well, which also generally are lumped in with the snow and ice complaints, but get captured differently. But 778 for the year, which is quite substantial. And we're seeing a generally positive feedback loop as well, that the issues we're getting, or citizens are reporting through here, we're able to respond on the back end and triage those in a much more efficient manner than, let's say, a year ago here, thanks to the back end software upgrades that were implemented in 2025. And with that, I will go into the presentation again I have for today. Here. So continue on with the PPP, not that one exactly. But I want to give council and the public an update on what has been a hot topic as of late, the data centers. So within the context of economic development and within the further context of our economic development strategy, I'll just start briefly with that. And hopefully with no more than 15 minutes, not to bore you with the details, we can have a discussion. So the ECDEV strategy, which is still in the works, the framework was presented to the previous council on October 6th at a committee of the whole. The strategy, which is in draft form, council will consider, be introduced to the first draft and have a discussion on that. And we're currently planning out community and stakeholder engagement. So led by both our ECDEV department and our Economic Development and Action Committee, EDAC. We've already invited the Chamber and Uptowns to have a conversation. We plan on having a public survey and other things to be determined, and Council certainly will provide direction on that, with a hopeful date of June 1st to have a final draft presented for consideration. The work to date over the last few years, the Brood project was obviously the bulk of the work. It was regional across central Alberta, 700 businesses or so surveyed there. I believe around 150 in Olds alone, along with the housing needs assessment and the strategy that resulted from there. A commercial gap analysis from 2024, I believe. The great work that the EDAC committee done the last couple of years, and then all the engagement built into these various initiatives through surveys and open houses and what have you. I think we have a pretty robust data set, and Council will get to view that in its entirety very soon. If you want to watch the October 6th presentation, it's a little bit lengthy, but it's on our website as well. But when we get into the granularity of it to introduce this data center conversation, the question is, well, what kind of economic development can we attract, more or less? Because generally, it's not as easy in small towns as it is in larger centers. So I summarize it in 4 main categories. Housing, commercial, institutional, and industrial are the 4 main subsets of development types. Now, we can argue this, but this is for the sake of framing the narrative. So on the housing front, led by the housing strategy, I would say we're having significant success attracting new and more housing development to Olds. And that has been council direction for several years now. And I think there's room to improve the diversity side of it and ensure it's sustained long term. On the commercial front, we're seeing modest commercial development, new development happen. But as we saw in the earlier presentation, we have plentiful commercial land. And as our population grows, that is directly tied to commercial development as well. That shopping, groceries, consumer goods, they follow population bases. When I say institutional, I largely mean government. That Olds is a hub for healthcare and education, for example. And if you look at the Olds Hospital, which has a $21 million dialysis expansion planned, hopefully some upgrades to the surgical unit also forthcoming. Plus at Olds College, $70 million trades building underway. We're seeing significant growth, even though this is not a tax related growth, as these are tax exempt properties. They do have an economic impact to here, and we want to support that any way we can. And the piece for today is industrial. So this is the big question, and similar to the opening presentation I gave on the Northeast area, this is the harder one, but I would argue it's also one of the more important ones from an economic point of view. Industrial development is generally larger, generally has higher paying jobs, more tax revenue, more ripple effect in terms of the spin-off businesses that it's required to support industry, and it really builds economic resilience into your tax base and into your community. In recent years, we have lost industrial businesses, revenue, and jobs. Nothing we have done or not done directly, just the changing nature of what will be the cannabis industry or globalized manufacturing, where decisions are made in Vancouver or New York or wherever companies may be based. You combine that with our growing needs, that we have infrastructure deficits, we have significantly reduced provincial funding, especially on the capital funding side, and we have growing cost pressures onto taxpayers. Expanding that industrial tax base will be a key centerpiece of this ECDEV strategy. But the challenges we have, as council's heard many times before, we have a lack of serviced industrial land, which in the Southeast industrial, for example, relatively small problem in the $700,000 to $1 million, $700,000 to $1 million range. In the Northeast area, looking at that $3 to $5 to $8 to $10 million lack of serviced land challenges. And then we have competition. In central Alberta, I believe Red Deer County is probably leading the way in terms of new industrial expansion. But around the province, we have Rocky View County, MD Foothills, Strathcona, Sturgeon, into Parkland counties, where most of and Leduc, Nisku County area as well. Those areas attract the large-scale industrial, which, again, that healthy tax base. So when we think of industry in central Alberta, but just for Old specific, I would again classify it into 3 subcategories that we have seen develop here. Agriculture, manufacturing, and oil and gas, energy. That's been traditional. And these industries are going to stay here. But like everything, they're evolving. And through our ECDev office and through myself, we speak with industrial developers on a regular basis, people shopping around for potential land, potential purchases, and querying, for example. What we're seeing is the emergent industries, which, again, all of them are brand new. They're evolutions of agriculture, such as the ag tech and value-added ag space, what they're generally called now. We have bioenergy, which 3 or 4 subset of that. Then we have digital technology, which obviously bleeds into data centers. And this is what we see come through, our email inbox, or people that we meet with tend to be in these sectors, because you look around, Central Alberta is ag-based, it's oil and gas-based, and we have Olds College here, along with our various infrastructures. So, based on Council's corporate plan, what are we trying to achieve? Broadly speaking, we call it a split. Our assessment value, which Olds has about $1.7 billion in taxable assessment. Right now, and as the end of 2025, it's about 80% residential and 20% non-residential, industrial and commercial. The target in Council's plan is to get that to 70-30 in the next 5 years. It's a pretty bold target. And that means exactly what it says, 70% of our revenue or our tax base will be residential, 30% will be non-residential. To do that, we need to attract all types of commercial and industrial development, but industry is that primary largest single source. So when we say ag tech, what kind of industries do we think we can attract here based on the data we have and who we're talking to? Vertical farming, automation, ag automation, and research and development. And a lot of this comes because of Olds College being here and because of our fiber optic infrastructure as well. On the value-added egg space, crop processing is a common thing. Canola crushing is also a exploration that happened a number of years ago. We think there's still potential here. And cannabis, we still have smaller cannabis outfits here, but nothing in the realm of sundial. But we still keep that option open and zoning open as well in the Southeast Industrial, largely. Biotechnology, bioenergy and fuels, like ethanol, for instance, textiles, things made from fiber and hemp materials, and various chemicals, or things like protein pills and from flax or what have you. We see that come through the door quite often. And in recent months, the digital economy. So applied AI, data centers, and this idea of a tech hub. This has been coming more and more popular since the province's recent announcements and pivots. So with industrial, we do understand, I believe, what our opportunities are, but the competition for industry in Alberta and regionally in Western Canada and probably internationally is significant. But all council can do is align our infrastructure planning with our ECDev attraction efforts, with the land availability, with market conditions. Where is industry going to invest? And how can we align ourselves with that? There's no sound science. But pivot that to data centers now, because again, topic du jour of the day. I'm going to go through kind of a data center 101 with the caveat that this is my research alone. I am no expert in data centers. This is what I've learned on my own accord and presenting it to council and the public today for their information. Again, and I'll get into the specificity of Olds' efforts to date. And I should also note that despite recent announcements, we do not have a data center application permit right now. There has been announcements, but I'll touch on that in a moment, but there's nothing council's considering or with the town at the moment to permit a data center in Olds. So a data center is basically a secure facility that houses servers and equipment. Since the internet was around, they've always existed. Traditional data centers did things like database management and cloud computing, use the term CPU to frame the ask. What we're seeing now is artificial intelligence data centers. Those do the same thing as traditional data centers, but also a whole lot more when it comes to cryptocurrency, AI training, other things that I don't really understand. I'm certainly not qualified enough to explain to you what they are. But they use also, in addition to CPUs, GPUs, graphics processing units, and they require an immense amount of power compared to traditional data centers. Snip off the internet, that seems to be a pretty common look, exterior and interior of data centers, just as an FYI. Why do data centers exist? Because the internet is a physical asset. Whether you Google search something, text on Facebook, watch Netflix, everything exists on a computer somewhere. The backbone of the internet, just like in Olds, with ONET coming here many years ago, fiber optic cables are in the ground. They run between oceans, connect cities, continents, provinces to each other. Those fiber optic cables, including the ones in Olds, connect to data centers. The ones here connect to Calgary, for example. And those data centers, of which roughly 12,000 globally, 39 here in Alberta, are probably going to expand in the coming years. Within those, they generally have exchange points. And that's where ISPs, like ONET, like TELUS, like Starlink, they connect to. So they have the organizers of the data, and they have the data itself to start exchanging it back and forth whenever it's called upon. How's it called upon? We call that the last mile. Whether it be cell towers, Starlink satellites, or your household modems, those are the things our computers and our cell phones connect to. And that gets us to the wider web. And data centers are obviously a core part of that. They're now expanding in scale and in number quite rapidly around the world. In fact, the demand, again, best I can tell, 33% annual growth projected for the next 5 years. Projections get hazy after that. But according to a McKinsey article from December, about $6.7 trillion is expected to be deployed over the next 5 years worldwide. In 2026, article by Goldman Sachs, similar numbers based on the appreciating value over the next 5 years. 40% of this investment, $600 billion, in 2026, will be targeted in North America, with Alberta targeting $100 billion over these 5 years. And that's based on the province's AI data center strategy. Who is responsible for the data center growth? Right now, as best as I can tell, 1/3 of all data center usage and over half of the new data center demand, the AI data center demand, is driven by 6 companies. These companies, which I'm sure we know all or most of them, are referred to anecdotally as hyperscalers as well. And who owns them? Well, these hyperscalers, they do own their own data centers. But it seems to be getting much more complex as more capital investment is needed. Traditionally, either if it's Meta or Amazon or Alphabet, they own their own centers, or it's third-party operators. Some that operate in Canada, for instance, are Equinix and Digital Realty. And there's centers as close as Airdrie, data centers as near as Airdrie to us. It's not just in the big centers. Private equity and investment consortiums, example, a firm like BlackRock, which people tend to know, they are entering the game at a record pace. Then we have specialized firms. Bell Canada is a big owner in Ontario and Eastern Canada. Beacon is currently building a data center west of Calgary. And TNE partners with the data district announcement that was done in Olds recently, which I'll touch on in a moment. So the ownership is evolving, but this is the best I can come up with in terms of who owns these data centers. How do locations get determined? Number one, based on our conversations to date, is infrastructure. Power availability, network connectivity, land scalability, the ability to grow is number one for data center developers. The geographical and regulatory environment, the climate, cool climates are more economical, environmental risks, earthquakes, tornadoes, and government regulations, those things factor in heavily. Then societal factors, a skilled workforce, community support, and physical security are all factors that influence data center locations. So into that, why Canada, why Alberta, why Olds? Well, at the federal level, there's a roughly $2 billion AI sovereign compute strategy that is also in parallel to the federal government's cloud first strategy and digital resilience initiatives. The federal government is directing its own self, and I'm assuming major providers in Canada, to start having data sovereignty, keeping data that's generated in Canada within Canada. Right now, as far as I understand, we're very interlinked with the United States in terms of where the data is hosted, that by Canadian companies, perhaps even by various governments. So the push from Ottawa to start to host more data domestically. On the Alberta piece, they have an entire strategy and a concierge office dedicated to AI data centers. I haven't seen the specifics, but regulatory modernization, relaxation, incentivization, I haven't seen those come through yet, but certainly a factor. And then the land, natural gas, and cold climates support it. And now, why is Olds a seemingly attractive place for data centers? I think our natural gas proximity, whether it be pipes or plants, we have some of both in the near vicinity. We have the trunk fiber optic lines. Everyone has the one run number 2, the fiber optic that connects Calgary to Edmonton. We have a redundant backhaul as well to Calgary, thanks to the ONET build here back in the day. We have plenty of land and zoning. We have access to a labor pool, and proximity to Calgary is the best guess. So this is the document generally powering, I believe, a lot of the foreign and AI developers to visit Alberta. And to date, we've probably seen 4 data centers. And they all have a similar vein about them in terms of why they're here, what they want to do. So data center and Olds. So we started to have conversations less than a year ago, and largely around the Sundial property. And based on Sundial, who still owns the building, their request to council it came to us probably in April, but on May 12th, council gave first reading to a rezoning bylaw for the Sundial property to add the use of data center, which we've never had before. June 9th was a public hearing and second and third reading, and data centers were added to our zoning for the first time. That data center developer, who we were engaged with as well, that did not come to fruition. They did back out, and no updates since for that particular one. As part of the land use bylaw review, which kicked off in May and June throughout the summer of 2025, data centers were just added to our little light industrial district as a discretionary use. And as I'm sure you recall or you were part of, we went through the various stages of first reading, public hearing, open houses, and engagement through that. And again, nothing was, most of the conversations focused on housing at that time, but nothing of note came out of those land use bylaw reviews. But late last year, early this year, right now, just Nate Glubish, for your information, is the AI Minister for Alberta, technically Minister of Technology and Innovation. And Danielle Smith, we all know her. They are actively tweeting olds at a record pace and getting lots of attention from media here and there, whether it be regional like the Red Advocate or national like the Financial Post. Data centers are a hot topic. But again, even though Data District has announced that they're coming to Olds, and we have met with them several times since September 2025, we don't have a development permit in hand, and no official kickoff has happened. So we don't have a role in private land transactions, so whichever property they bought, excuse me, that's between them and the purchaser. So, but when that does happen, what does it look like for approvals? I'm getting speculative now because I've never been through one of these before. Very few places have to this extent. But we have a municipal versus provincial scope. So obviously ours, it's zoning, land use approval, safety codes, local infrastructure, and aesthetics, to frame it briefly. Provincial, water, power, emissions. Then some places we overlap on, noise and light mitigation, for instance, is areas where we can both consider it. But obviously the province has jurisdiction if we issue something against their processes. So the primary concerns and risks with data centers, and this is largely taken from the experience in the United States, which has been going through this for the last 5 years or so, power grid capacity and water consumption. And the community concerns, which mimic or mirror these resource risks, the cost of electricity because of the investments or consumptions led by data centers, water scarcity, noise, light, and emissions of the facilities, and emergency response capabilities. So these are the ones I'll touch on briefly. I know I'm over 15 minutes, I do apologize. But also, it's not to minimize, but there are some what I call out of scope issues. Things I don't want to say aren't issues, but that we don't consider, really can't consider in these development permit applications and our adjudication, because we are governed by a fairly strict process under the Municipal Government Act. But there are concerns you'll hear about, the enhanced risk of AI-led cyber attacks, data privacy issues because of AI. If it's an AI bubble, bankrupt and stranded assets, if these buildings are abandoned, and then whatever other effects of an AI economy, from job losses to pick your Twitter thread of the day. It's hard to say for sure, but those are out of scope for the town of Olds. On the province's side, we will be engaged, certainly, and then we'll be certainly looking at our own land use bylaw and what we're able to do through things like noise and light mitigation, servicing, and those costs associated. So for noise and visibility concerns, this includes aesthetics. Light is a good example, and noise. These are things we would take very seriously in such a development, and that comes during the permitting process, generally during the development permit, that setbacks and buffering requirements from residences would need to be assured that there's certain decibel requirements under the Alberta Utility Commission. For instance, there's visual and light parameters under our land use bylaw. Roads and servicing, costs would be borne by developers. The town is not going to front any costs to get these developments moving, nor are we offering any incentives or assistance for that. If they want to come, they're coming on their own accord. we do confirm, obviously, the most suitable water, sanitary, and storm options, not just for the development, but how it ties into our larger system as well. And then that's all done through a development agreement for larger developers, and especially for new buildings, as opposed to purchasing or retrofitting an existing building. Emergency response, water availability, just like all firefighting initiatives, that's the most important factor in this. But similar to what our Olds Fire Department trains for with the gas plant south of town, they're already well equipped to respond to industrial fires of this nature. There's not a lot of concern from the emergency response piece. Provincial issues, much, I would say, larger issues to navigate. Power grid demand, that the data center strategy does prioritize data centers based on their self-generation capacity, which I would say, I've seen 100% natural gas driven. It is focused on stabilizing prices for existing customers. So there is a penalization mechanism built into the province's strategy that if you connect to the grid, you have to pay a certain premium on top of whatever other taxes or rates there is engaged. And there's also AUC process, which I'll get to in a moment as well. Water consumption. This is also, the province issues water allocations for the town of Olds. Ours is built into the Mountain View Regional Water Services Commission. I'll speak to that briefly as well. That license and the Red Deer River Basin does have excess capacity, and any provincial approval is required for significant industrial water use. And that's generally handled through the commission instead of us if it gets to that point. But for the AUC, the Alberta Utilities Commission, and this presentation will be put onto the website as part of the meeting minutes. That's actually a hyperlink to Rule 007. It's a very massive document. I think this hyperlink will take you to the actual page in the appendices where it speaks about the PIP process, or Participant Involvement Program. So all data centers have to go through the PIP with the AUC. Basically notifies landowners or renters, neighboring municipalities, indigenous groups where applicable about the project in an understandable way. It documents concerns and responses. It files the summary as part of the AUC. So this is developer-led, and certainly the municipality, should we have one of those come before us, be involved in also. And it will focus on things like the natural gas generation, any grid tie-ins, water demands as well. With the AUC itself, that participant information program is the largest single piece. That's part of the application that gets filed with the AUC. The AUC conducts a completeness review, and then it's up to the AUC whether they go through a public notice, opportunity to participate, additional information requests, and a public hearing. And that's at their governance level. And then a decision is issued. So roughly 6 steps in the process. This is my interpretation of that Rule 007, so certainly I encourage anyone to bring it up as well. But to get specific on power and water, the Sundial property, to go back to that one was unique to developers, to data center developers, because as some of you might recall, when Sundial was built in Olds, predating my time here, they purchased a large amount of electricity from the grid, I believe in the realm of 20 to 25 megawatts. So that capacity is still there. So in theory, without asking the province for more electricity, they could tie into that existing, I'll call it 20 megawatts for the sake of argument. I don't know the exact specificity of it, and start generating. And that amount is already factored into the grid's overall allocation. That's why Sundial was so attractive to data center developers, and probably still is. But every other developer that we've talked to so far, without exception, has a natural gas component to their data center power. That's essentially a small gas plant on their premise, fed from either one of the major transport lines that intersect Alberta or a gas plant if it's in proximity. And that seems where the province is at. So natural gas is far above our pay grades. That's, I think, where most of the issues will be decided, whether they can make these gas deals work, because they can't tie into the grid. There's just no more capacity. But for those concerned about price fluctuations as well, that's also a good thing, because I have not seen any applications or interest in tying into the electrical grid, as natural gas in Alberta is much cheaper. Water needs, again, every single data center we have spoken to has proposed a closed loop system. So if I had to guess based on only one of the 4 or 5 who's given us specifications per data center to fill the pipes, it's 300 to 500 cubic meters of water, which is a fraction of a % of what Olds would use in a given day. And that stays in there essentially forever, probably mixed with some chemicals to keep it cool. But it's not water on demand where these things are using what you can see on various news stories or YouTube videos from Data Center Alley in Virginia or Ohio or other states that are facing water scarcity challenges because of these data centers. For example, Sundial, at their peak production period, used about 5,500 cubic meters per month in potable water from our system. So we still haven't caught up to that demand, even with our growth since Sundial shut down. So there is capacity there. But the most important takeaway, even though the Water Commission, they hold an annual license of 9.9 million cubic meters, and they use less of that. The bigger issue is, though, what in years of drought, it doesn't matter how large your water license is. If there's no water, if water is short, what are you going to do? Not that we can't approve or disapprove it, but again, with the province being responsible for industrial water approvals, the data centers have to have closed loop systems. I can't see the province approving this should they follow the American model of just having a tap, essentially, to cool the data centers. So that's the best information I have on water and power at this time, but we haven't seen anything that would demonstrate them being massive users of electricity or water. Natural gas, massive users of natural gas, though. So the potential positive impacts, as you can probably infer, there's both temporary and permanent jobs created. These data centers are in the billions of dollars in terms of their net investment in the community. Not all of that is taxable, but there's a tax and franchise fee revenue component. Franchise fees are those charges riders on electricity and natural gas bills. The ancillary impacts, things like housing growth, secondary spin-off businesses, community investment opportunities, et cetera. And that potential to pivot into a technology hub as we see agriculture and even Olds College becoming more focused on the tech side of ag. We have the infrastructure in place from the ONET investments, part of the larger economic development strategy conversations. And what does that vision look like of what Olds can become in the next 10 to 20 years? But to touch on the employment piece, always a hot topic. Obviously, during construction, there's hundreds to thousands of workers involved, depending on the scale of a data center. Just like any large industrial project, they have a lot of pieces and different trades. Traditionally, they're modest employers at full time. 30 to 150 seems to be the ratio, the best ratio I can find in my Googling for what data centers employ. These are tradesmen, IT and network operations, site management and security, still pretty good jobs. There's obviously the indirect jobs, as mentioned, the spin-off businesses. They still need their parking lot plowed, their grass maintained, their pick your offshoot businesses. But what's different for Alberta when it comes to employment in AI data centers is this cogeneration. Each data center will essentially be running a small natural gas plant on its premise. You don't do that in a vacuum. You do need qualified people to run this plant. So that's where this hasn't been built yet. There hasn't been an example, so we don't know, but there will be obviously employment implications based on this natural gas cogeneration. So in conclusion, way over time. AI data centers are already here. They will be built in Alberta. They're a significant part of the economy already and predicted to grow substantially in the next 5 years at least. Attracting them is one piece of the larger ECDEV strategy. Certainly risks, issues, and concerns that need to be addressed. Based on the town's scope, we're confident we can manage our risks and that we will work with the AUC and the province itself to manage, communicate, understand their process and decisions better. And the economic potential is significant for both Olds and Alberta. So I think that's all I got there. Thank you for staying with me.
Thanks for your 15-minute presentation there, CEO Williams. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. CEO Williams, how long would it take for a data center to be built before it was up and running? I know they start sort of gradual. So do they gradually turn their system on and then they gradually build more into it? Or how does that work? You understanding what I'm asking?
Yeah, no,
Oh, okay, good.
totally, I am.
Okay.
Through the chair, I don't know from their internal processes. I just know from what like working with the province since the data district announcement and hearing from developers. I can only speak to the government side of it. The biggest piece is the natural gas. That they are such large users of natural gas, trying to build the pipeline, secure the contracts, and that seems to be the bigger piece. So. If I had to throw a number, if you already had a facility built, it's probably 6 months at the earliest to get all that in place, but you're more looking at 12 to 24.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly, and through you to the CAO. I know there are a lot of unanswered questions, and we're still way upstream, I guess, or downstream. I'm not sure. Upstream, I guess, from anything tangibly happening, but lots of good initial talk. Just wondering, though, is this, it will vary by circumstance and build out, is this the Willy Wonka golden chocolate bar for the town then, in terms of revenue? Because you're talking closed loop systems, so obviously perhaps not as much franchise fee as we would get if they were doing regular draw-offs, and you've talked in-house natural gas. Can you give a sense, and I know it's dependent on the particulars, give a sense financially what an impact would be to the town? Thank you.
Thanks for the question through the chair. No, data centers aren't the golden goose. I don't believe. We already know their equipment inside of this building itself is tax exempt. The structures are taxable. Franchise fees, if they're tied into the grid, obviously we do get franchise fees. But if it's cogeneration, it's uncharted territory. So I'm guessing no right now. But I think there's still, when you're talking facilities being billions of dollars to build, there's going to be a significant impact, but it's not going to be in the realm of like doubling our budget or anything to that effect. And it has to be part of a larger strategy, right? When council does consider the economic development strategy draft and we start engaging, I think industrial attraction is where we have to make sure we have a large focus on. Because again, housing, institutional, commercial, I believe does have a reasonable path forward, but just industrial attraction as a whole is kind of that main piece we're looking for. We have we have enough land, even though it's not serviced. I think we have the history of being a attractive place for industry to move to. Just data centers will be a part of that, but it shouldn't be the only thing we focus on.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Kirsch.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Daly, and to you, to CAO Williams. Backing up a bit in your presentation on the ag tech side, is there any discussions with Olds College directly to attract partners into town, or is that just a hypothetical that you kind of came up with?
Yeah, good question. And through you, Mayor Daly, to Councillor Kirsch. There's no direct conversations. We certainly do have conversations with developers that either come through us and we introduce them to the college, or vice versa. But Olds College has taken part. They are members of our Brood strategy workforce. They are members of our Phase 2, which what we're doing next in the NGEI initiative through the, and EDAC committee will be involved in that, of course. But there's nothing we're, say, both chasing right now. It's more positioning ourselves as that, ag tech or value-added ag hub, that when we have those businesses approach us, they're generally here because they know Olds is known for agriculture. So making sure we have those relationships established and understanding, what each of us wants is more of the alignment through the strategy.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly, and through you to CEO Williams. We talked before about getting closer to that 70-30 split, and I just kind of want to maybe ask, how does that look, or what kind of benefits can the regular citizens see when we achieve that? I remember you mentioning something along the lines of how, like a large industrial company, they pay taxes, but they don't necessarily care about a swing set in a park, and just wondering if you could maybe elaborate on that. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. And through you, yeah, my analogies get a little creative at times. But the simple answer is when you have a higher non-residential tax base, it takes tax pressure off the residential tax base. And even though we are very cognizant of not exploiting our commercial or industrial taxpayers, from a services point of view, the reason why it's more attractive, they do pay a slightly higher rate. But when we have a new subdivision, for example, people move in and they have kids or they're seniors, they require services, obviously, roads and sidewalks and water and sanitary, playgrounds, pools, hockey rinks, pick it, right? Pick your business down here in Cornerstone. When that moves in, they require none of that. They build their own infrastructure, they plow their own roads, they don't care if we have a swimming pool, for example. So the service implication, the servicing cost, long-term on a business is much lower than on a residential tax base. But it's not to say that we only want businesses and no houses, but it helps us afford the amenities that we've grown accustomed to expect. And the more you decrease that 80-20 into 90-10, the more of those amenities costs get placed onto the homeowners, which have a harder time paying the tax bill. I think that explains it well enough. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. Through you to the CEO. The whole area of ECDev, I think, fascinates all of us, or however you want to call it, ECDev or business development. And maybe this is a question better left when the full ECDev or economic development strategy, or the initial presentation is made. But can you shed a little bit of light, from my curiosity, like how this process works? To me, it's very fascinating. And how it layers in, we have our marketing initiative videos for the town. We have the Invest Olds website. We have an economic development officer. We have Invest Alberta. I'm sure. So I just sit there and are we making cold calls like a vacuum salesman to people looking to generate developers and business? I'm sure there's an underworld market once our name is out there with AI, data centers. All of a sudden, people's ears and developers' interest perks up. But can you talk a little bit about how those leads come from, whether it be in the ag tech, data centers, or whatever? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. And through the chair, it does vary. On the, let's say, housing development, we know there's housing developers in the area who build in similar sized communities. We don't own land, so we generally connect people to those housing developers, and that often is a cold call to those people. But in the period post pandemic, housing was such a rapid industry that we did entertain quite a lot of developers visiting us. So it was that hybrid approach of us cold calling and plus entertaining dozens and dozens of housing developers and connecting them to landowners here in town. Commercial is almost 100% cold calling for us. It's very difficult to get commercial if you're not expanding your population base. So that is more of us trying to incentivize or no, attract them to come here. Industrial, that is much more difficult. We don't know who to call for industrial. So it's a mix of them coming to us through Olds College, for instance, Invest Alberta. Data centers, for instance, generally that interest comes through the province, through their investment arm, and then they try to piece together who has the most ideal opportunity. But it is a mix. It does require, I think, quite a lot of man hours, and you strike out probably 95% of the time when you're talking with developers, and whether you went to them or they came to you. So it's a mixed bag, I guess, is the short answer.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? No, not at this time, eh? What do you think? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, CAO Williams, for the presentation. I found it to be very well-rounded and level-headed. I just had a couple of quick comments on the data centers. Yep. Oh, yeah. My name is Connor Fullerton. I live here in Olds, and I'm a member of the ag community and well-connected in the entrepreneurship area here as well, too. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions on the comments of data centers. Is anybody here familiar with Rocky View County's reception of the data center there? I think that might be the best analog that Olds might hold, and just want to urge you to take some time to look into that. While the data centers themselves have been very much promoted at the higher levels, I found, especially in the rural areas, that the reception of data centers has been lukewarm at best. And in the case of Rocky View County, which Olds might find as useful analog, really quite hostile, actually. There's a lot of environmental impacts, there's a lot of power draw, and there's exceptional use of water. In the case of Rocky View County, there was a 6 or 8 inch pipe was going to be required just to feed water into this. And so you can see that they did take a different approach than this closed loop system. So that might be a good analog to look into, and I just urge you to take some time to read into that. Just from the populace, the reception to the data centers didn't seem to be too positive, if not quite negative. That would be my main thing. I'd be happy to talk about data centers at length, but I think you've done a very excellent job of covering them to this point as well. Lots of potential, but there is a lot of challenges as well, and sentiment being one of the big ones as well. Thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you. Would you like to respond? No? Okay, good. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. And through to the CEO, what would be required, or what would be some trigger point for us to get a open house on data centers? Has there been a lot of feedback that we've heard, and like at what time do we start to consider having one of those for more chances like this to hear from the public? Because there is a lot of questions out there. I think there's a lot of people who are going online looking at these disaster ones in the states that have this evaporative cooling that are drawing a ton of power, consuming a lot of water, drying up their basins. And I think that we need to get in front of that and say that's not what's being proposed here. So I'm just wondering if there's a trigger that happens for that, because that's something that just as council we can put forward. Thanks.
Thank you, and through the chair. Short answer, council can host any open houses it wants. With the Rocky View example, my understanding that was developer-led, so they already had a proposal kind of drafted to present to Rocky View County Council. We don't have any such proposal to date. We don't fully understand what, let's say, Data District's proposal is looking like right now. So I think I would almost pose the question back to council, if of course engagement, if we choose to go open house route, do you want to wait till we have a proposal, or is it more of the broader information session? Because data centers are already use in our industrial areas. And that happened, as I explained, in 2 iterative processes as well, with the sundial rezoning and the land use bylaw review and amendment. So whether it be we wait till we have a proposal and then engage, probably in line with the AUC process, just so the most information is available and current and people are hearing it, because we can't answer a lot of the questions, I believe, when it comes to, let's say, natural gas generation plants. But I would leave that to council, but whether it be driven by an actual development or at a broader, more high level.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Daly. I believe I'm comfortable just waiting until there actually is some more concrete information to go on, but I would want the town to have, I don't know if there's a little brief, I guess, primer on data centers that I would encourage anybody listening to go check that out, just to see what's being proposed around here specifically, just so that we can separate, again, what's happening down in the States from what's happening here. And yeah, once there is something there, I would love to have an open house on that. If we can move forward on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and also just the advancement of technology over the last few years in this area. And when we're talking about power, we're talking about water. Those advancements and how they reduce the impact onto the surrounding communities as well would be a huge factor to play into that. Depending on the developer that comes forward, of course, will determine that as well. So I think that we should wait until we actually have somebody that's, you know, got the permits in place and ready to go, or pending permits. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I concur. I should wait until we actually have something in front of us so that we know what we're going to discuss. Because you can do all these what ifs and what to bring forward and what to use and what they're not going to use versus this is what they're coming for, this is what they're going to do, and then we have something to discuss with the public more in depth. So I would wait until we actually have something.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. Yeah, and my brief comment, I'm certainly all for the information and communication and education, not only for council, but for the town and the taxpayers as well. And certainly getting information out in advance is helpful. I'm not one for speculation and navel gazing and running what-if scenarios. So in essence, I'm saying, yeah, if we have specificity around proposals, then we can address those. But at the same time, I guess my question to the CAO, and maybe I missed it, there is information already available on our website. This presentation is or will be available, correct? And I think we're already starting to populate the town website, with some very general information around data centers. So, but for sure, it makes all the sense in the world. And until we receive something very specific, we're just kind of speculating. So, thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? No? Thank you very much for your presentation, CEO Williams. It's very informative, and appreciate you putting that together for us.
Very welcome. And I think, yeah, the CO report just requires a motion to close, yeah.
I'm getting to that one yet. I wanted to thank you first before we turned it. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'm going to ask somebody to make the motion. Councillor Kirsch.
I make a motion that the Chief Administrative Officer's report be accepted for information.
Thank you very much for that. Any final comments? Councillor Taylor?
Thanks, Mayor Daly. Yeah, I would just highly encourage anybody listening to go look at these reports. I would just hate for calories to be burnt stressing about what might be happening when it's not. And there's a lot of reasons why it can't, and I think those outlined perfectly in this report. So again, I know there's a lot of questions about it, lots of very legitimate concerns about these things. I get it. I just want to make sure that the conversation around the A&W, people aren't stressing about it, and we're not going crazy thinking of these doomsday possibilities. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, I call for the vote then. All those in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much for that. That moves us on to item number 7, which is our adjournment. And I would like to adjourn the meeting at 2:41 p.m. Consensus, everybody? Yep. Okay, we're adjourned then. And not that I see, no. Thanks. No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to those who attended in the gallery. Much appreciated. And thank you to those who attended online. Have a great day.